Hello students. In the previous lecture we had seen the threat of perversion in which the dangerous supplement breaks with nature, the entire description of this moving away from the nature. The confession states the evocation of the dangerous supplement at the moment when it is a question of making visible a distancing which is neither the same nor another. Nature draws away at the same time as the mother, or rather mama, who already signified the disappearance of the true mother and has substituted herself in the well-known ambiguous manner. Now, moving further with today's lecture, in which Derrida talks about the chain of supplements, we see that the discovery of the dangerous supplement will be next cited among these follies, but it still retain a privilege. Rousseau evokes it after the others and as a sort of explanation of the state inconceivable to reason, which is obviously unthinkable to the reason, for it is not the question of diverting total enjoyment towards a particular substitute, but now of experiencing it or miming it directly and its totality. It is no longer a question of kissing the bed, the floor, the curtains, the furniture, etc., not even of swallowing the piece that Rousseau said she had put into her mouth, but of disposing of the whole sex as one's desire. So Derrida says that I remarked that the stage of this theatre was not only a setting in the generally understood sense, an ensemble of accessories. The topographic disposition of the experience is not unimportant. Jacques is in the house of Madame de Warens, close enough to Mamma to see her and to nourish his imagination upon her, but with the possibility of partition. It is at the moment when the mother disappears that the substitution becomes possible and necessary. The play of maternal presence or absence, this alteration of perception and imagination must correspond to an organization of space. The text argues as follows. It says, add to this habit the circumstance of my position, living as I was with a beautiful woman, cherishing her image in the bottom of my heart, seeing her continually throughout the day, surrounded in the evening by objects which reminded me of her, sleeping in the bed in which I knew she had slept. What causes for excitement? Many a reader who reflect upon them no doubt already consider me as half dead. Quite the contrary, that which ought to have destroyed me was just the thing that saved me, at least for a time. Intoxicated with the charm of living with her, with the ardent desire of spending my life with her, I always saw in her, whether she were absent or present, a tender mother, a beloved sister, a delightful friend, and nothing more. She was for me the only woman in the world, and the extreme sweetness of the feeling with which she inspires me did not allow my senses time to awake for others, and protected me against her and all her sex. So Derrida says that this experience was not an event marking an archaic or adolescent period. So this experience which we had seen right now in this passage was of Rousseau. He had written it, and here Derrida says that not only did it construct or sustain a particular hidden foundation, an edifice of significations, it remained an active obsession whose present is constantly reactivated and constituted in its turn, until the end of Jacques Rousseau's life and text. So a little further on in the text of the confession, in book 4, a little incident which I find some difficulty in relating is related to us. So the encounter with a man addicted to the same vice. He talks about the person or a man who is addicted to the same vices. Now terrified Jacques runs away trembling as if he had just committed a crime. So the recollection of this incident cured me of it for a long time, it was said by Rousseau. Rousseau will never stop having recourse and accusing himself of his onanism that permits one to be himself affected by providing himself with presence, by summoning absent beauties. In his eyes, it will remain the model of vice and perversion. Affecting oneself by another presence, one corrupts oneself or makes oneself other by oneself, or ons alter soi mem, as said by Rousseau. So Rousseau neither wishes to think nor can think that this alteration does not simply happen to the self, that it is the self's very origin. He must consider it as a contingent evil coming from without to affect the integrity of the subject. But he cannot give up what immediately restores to him the other desired presence, no more than one can give up language. This is why, in this respect as well as he says in dialogue, to the end of his life he will remain an aged child. That means he is not going to change. For him the mother is going to remain the mother and he is going to remain the same child to his mother, and that means to the end of his life he will remain an aged child. Now here the restitution, or we can say the compensation or restoration of presence by language. Now restitution at the same time symbolic and immediate. This contradiction must be thought immediate experience of restitution, because as experience, as consciousness or as conscience, it dispenses this passage through the world. What is touching is touched, or auto-affection gives itself a pure autocracy. Now what is auto-affection? We find the idea of auto-affection or self-affection in ancient Greek philosophy, for example, in Aristotle's definition of God as thought, thinking itself. Now auto-affection refers to the self-experience. It is not, however, the experience opened by the deliberate act of reflection through which an object called the self is given in the representation. Now he says that if the presence that it then gives itself is the substitutive symbol of another presence, it has never been possible to desire that presence in person before this play of substitution and this symbolic experience of auto-affection. The thing itself does not appear outside the symbolic system that does not exist without the possibility of auto-affection. Experience of immediate restitution also because it does not wait. It is satisfied then and there and in the moment. If it waits, it is not because the other makes it wait. Pleasure seems no longer to be deferred. Now he says, why give oneself so much trouble in a hope remote from so poor and uncertain success, when one can from the very instant it is from dialogue. Now, but what is no longer deferred or delayed is also absolutely delayed or deferred. I am repeating, what is no longer deferred is also absolutely deferred. The presence that is thus delivered to us in the present is chimera, which is fantasy and daydream. Now auto-affection is a pure speculation. The sign, the image, the representation which comes to supplement the absent presence are the illusions that sidetrack us. So the culpability, or we can say the responsibility to the anguish of death and castration, is added or rather is assimilated the experience of frustration. Donner Lee change, which he says in sidetracking or giving money, is in whatever sense it is understood. This expression describes the recourse to the supplement admirably. The enjoyment of thing itself is thus undermined in its act and in its essence by frustration. One cannot therefore say that it has an essence or an act. Something promises itself as it escapes, gives itself as it moves away, and strictly speaking, it cannot even be called presence. Now he says, such is the constraint of supplement, such exceeding all the language of metaphysics, is this structure almost unthinkable to reason, almost inconceivable. Simple irrationality, the opposite of reason, are less irritating and waylaying for classical logic. The supplement is maddening because it is neither presence nor absence, and because it consequently breaches both our pleasure and our virginity. So, abstinence and enjoyment, pleasure and wisdom, escaped me in equal measure. This was said by Rousseau in Confession. Now, are things not complicated enough? Yes, the symbolic is the immediate, presence is absence, the non-deferred is deferred, pleasure is the menace of death. But one stroke must still be added to this system, to this strange economy of supplement. In a certain way, it was already legible. A terrifying menace, the supplement is also the first and surest protection against that very menace. This is why it cannot be given up. Now, an sexual autoaffection, that is autoaffection in general, neither begins nor ends with what one thinks can be circumscribed by the name of masturbation. The supplement has not only the power of procuring, that is acquiring, an absent presence through its image, procuring it for us through the proxy, that is procuration of the sign. It holds it at a distance and masters it. For this presence is at the same time desired and feared. Now the supplement transgresses and at the same time respects the interdict. This is what also permits writing as the supplement of speech, but already also the spoken word as writing in general. In its economy exposes and protects us at the same time according to the play of forces and of the differences of forces. Thus, the supplement is dangerous in that it threatens us with death, but Rousseau thinks that it is not at all as dangerous as cohabitation with women. Pleasure itself without symbol or suppletory, that which would accord, that is, that which would unify us to pure presence itself, if such a thing were possible, would be only another name for death. So, Rousseau says, enjoyment in such a thing made for men. Ah, if I had ever in my life tasted the delight of love even once in their plenitude, I do not imagine that my frail existence would have been sufficient for them. I would have been dead in the act. If one abides by the universal evidences, by the necessary and priori value of this proposition in the form of sign, one must immediately recognize that cohabitation with women, heteroeroticism, can be lived. So, effectively, really as one believes in, it can be said. So, only through the ability to reserve within itself its own supplementary protection. In other words, between autoeroticism and heteroeroticism, there is not a frontier but an economic distribution. It is within this general rule that the differences are mapped out. This is Rousseau's general rule, and before trying what I do not pretend to be doing here to encompass the pure singularity of Rousseau's economy for his writing. This was said by Derrida. So, he said that one must carefully raise and articulate between them all the structural or essential necessities on their different level of generality. It is from a certain determined representation of cohabitation with women that Rousseau had to have recourse, that is option or alternative, throughout his life to that type of dangerous supplement that is called masturbation, and that cannot be separated from his activity as a writer till the end. So, Therese here is the maid with whom Rousseau lived throughout his life, and I had given the reference of Therese in the first lecture itself when we had started the dangerous supplement, dangerous supplement. So, Derrida says that Therese, of whom we can speak, Therese in the text, whose name and life belong to the writing we read, experience it at her cost. So, in book 12 of the Confession, at the moment when one must speak without reserve, the reason combined of certain resolution is confined to us, where he says, I must speak without reserve. I have never concealed either my poor mamma's fault or my own. I must not show greater favour to Therese either, and I, pleased as I am to render honour to one who is so dear to me, neither do I wish to conceal her faults, if so be that an involuntary change in the earth's affection is really a fault. I had long since observed that her affection for me had cooled. I was conscious again of unpleasantness, the effect of which I had formerly felt when with mamma, and the effect was the same with Therese. Let us not look for perfection which are not to be found in nature. It would be the same with any other woman whatsoever. My situation, however, was at that time the same, and even aggravated by the animosity of my enemies, who only sought to find me at fault. I was afraid of repetition, and not desiring to run the risk of it, I preferred to condemn myself to strict continence and to expose Therese to the risk of finding herself in the same condition again. Besides, I had observed that intercourse with women distinctly aggravated my ill health. These two reasons combined caused me to form resolution which I had sometimes been very inconsistent in keeping, but in which I had preserved with greater preserved with greater firmness for the last 3 of my years. So, these were the words written by Rousseau. Now, this perversion consists of preferring the sign and protects him from mortal expenditure, to be sure. But this apparently egotistical economy also functions within an entire system of moral representation. Egotism is redeemed by culpability, which determines autoeroticism as a fatal waste and a wounding of self by the self. Now, but as we thus harm only, like he says, Rousseau says that he harms only himself, this perversion is not truly condemnable. Rousseau explains it in more than one letter, which he thus says that with that exception and the exception of vices that have always done harm to me alone, that means indulging with himself, I can expose to all eyes a life irreproachable in all the secrets of my heart. I have great vices, but they have never harmed anyone but me. So, Jacques could thus look for a supplement to Therese, only on one condition, that the system of supplementarity in general be already open in its possibility, that the play of substitution be already operative for a long time, and that in a certain way Therese herself be already a supplement. Therese herself was a supplement according to Rousseau, because he had that feeling, or the as he said, that natural or close to the nature was mother, and Therese he considered as supplement. So that is why he is saying that yes, a substitution be already operative for a long time, and that in certain way Therese herself be already a supplement, as Mama was already the supplement of an unknown mother, and as the true mother herself, at whom the unknown psychoanalysis of the case of Jean-Jacques Rousseau stops. It was also in a certain way a supplement from the first trace, and even if she had not truly died in giving birth, here is the chain of supplements. The name Mama already designated one. That means it is a chain of supplement that he is talking about. His Mama and then Therese. So Mama herself was a supplement according to Rousseau. He says, "Ah, my Therese, I am only too happy to possess you, modest and healthy, and not to find what I never looked for. The question is of maidenhood. At first I had only sought amusement. I now saw that I had found more and gained a companion. A little intimacy with this excellent girl, a little reflection upon my situation made me feel that, while thinking only of my pleasures, I had done much to promote my happiness. To supply the place of my extinguished ambition, I needed a lively sentiment which should take complete possession of my heart. In a word, I needed a successor to Mama. As I should never live with her again, I wanted someone to live with her pupil, in whom I might find the simplicity and docility of heart which she had found in me. I felt it necessary that the gentle tranquillity of private and domestic life should make up to me for the loss of brilliant career which I was renouncing. When I was quite alone, I felt a void in my heart which it only needed another heart to fill. Destiny and deprived me of, or at least in part, alienated me from that heart for which nature formed me. From that moment I was alone. For with me it has always been everything or nothing. I found in Therese the substitute, that is the supplement that I needed. So through this sequence of supplements, a necessity is announced, that of an infinite chain, ineluctably multiplying the supplementary mediations and produce the sense of the very thing they differ. Sort of mirage of the thing itself, of immediate presence of originary perception. So immediacy is derived. That all begins through the intermediary is what is indeed inconceivable or unthinkable to the reason. So perhaps we can say that Derrida's most quoted and most famous assertion, which appears in an essay on Rousseau in his book of Grammatology, is the statement that there is no out of context, which he says in French is "il n'y a pas de hors texte." So critics of Derrida have been often accused of having mistranslated the phrase in French to suggest he had written, "There is nothing outside the text." But what actually he had written? "There is no out of text context." And of having widely disseminated this translation to make it appear that Derrida is suggesting that nothing exists but words. Derrida once said that this assertion, which for some has become a sort of slogan in general, so badly understood, of deconstruction, means nothing else. So there is nothing outside the context, according to Derrida. In this form, which says exactly the same thing, the formula would doubtless have been less shocking. So this was the dangerous supplement, or that dangerous supplement by Derrida. Thank you all.